You told my colleague Steve Paikin that your party in the last election veered too far from class-based to identity politics. This week, I think arguably the biggest headline out of the official launch, the requirement that at least 50% of the total required signatures must be from members who do not identify as a cis man. It's the negative connotation, right? It's like cis men can't, don't, do not. The language, I would imagine, is important, and it does send a message.
Back in July, we warned you that the NDP's leadership race was heading straight for trouble. Rules that went far beyond fundraising and signatures, which dove headfirst into sexism and discrimination. Well, yesterday, interim NDP leader Don Davies sat down with Vashi Kapelos, and she wasted no time at all calling out both him and his party. Let's take a look.
To reset and rebuild, and how will it carve out space in this new parliament? With me now to talk about all of that is interim NDP leader Don Davies. Mr. Davies, a pleasure to welcome you back to the program. Thank you for making the time.
Great to be with you, Vashi.
I have a couple of questions for you looking ahead to the leadership, but I actually wanted to start off. I had heard a few interviews you've done where you reflect on the last 4 months and the degree to which you've talked to Canadians about what matters to them, about the outcome of the election. And I wondered from those conversations what you would identify as what they told you about where the party went wrong.
Well, I think the overwhelming consensus among New Democrats from all walks of life, Vashi, is that we are a party of working people, and that's why we were formed. In 1961, we were formed by working people, for working people, to bring that perspective to Parliament, because there's a void at the national level. Neither the Conservatives nor the Liberals regard their mission as explicitly to represent the interests and voices of working people and other marginalized groups. So I heard a very strong message that they want the NDP to rediscover our roots and to reimagine a strong, bold, progressive option that is centered on improving lives for working people across the country.
Do you, I mean, what would you identify as your roots? Is it centered in the working class vote? And I wonder, again, why you think in the last election messaging around that failed to resonate. Because I think one of the most interesting things in some of the surveys that have been done since the election is, yes, Trump mattered a lot. I know that we kind of all assumed that that had such an enormous impact on the outcome of the election for all the parties, and it did matter. But other issues were very, very high up there, including things that traditionally I think matter to people who vote for the NDP, like cost of living and housing. Like, is there something in particular you think made it so that your party failed to capitalize on that part of the sentiment?
Okay, so here's the thing. Don Davies, on other less prominent podcasts that he went on, he was a little bit more candid about what actually went wrong, and he said, yeah, we screwed up, and we screwed up big time. So, you know, when you're not on a national platform like CTV, you can be a little bit more candid, but you have to be very careful at what you say when you're on the CTV news platform, because that's really where your voters are actually looking. And the issue is, and he knows it, the NDP knows it, the Conservatives ate their lunch. They literally ate their lunch. And they did that because the NDP sided with the Liberals over the last Parliament for almost 4 years. And they let Canada disintegrate. They weren't standing up for working class people. They weren't standing up for affordability. They weren't standing up for anything. They were standing up for Justin Trudeau. That's who they were standing up for. And so everyone that used to vote for them said, screw you guys. You don't have our interests at heart. The Conservatives are the only ones that seem to actually give a damn and are actually talking about putting in policies that reflect what we actually want. So that's what happened. Let's be real.
You know, at this point, the election's 4 months ago, Vashi. We've got a review process that's going on right now. I'm really thinking, looking forward. You know, we have serious problems facing this country, and the specter of Donald Trump is still casting a shadow over our country. I saw job numbers came out today that show the highest unemployment rate in 10 years, over 7%, and among young people, it's in the mid-teens. There's a jobs crisis, there's a housing crisis, there's a climate crisis, there's an affordability crisis. And we have serious problems to examine. So, I'm really excited about our leadership race. We're going to have a vigorous democratic debate across this country. We're having a caucus retreat next week where our caucus is going to get together and plan priorities for the fall. And we've got a very important budget coming up in October. So we're really looking forward. And we know that the NDP is at its best when we are proposing concrete, positive, practical policies that will improve the lives of working people, which are the majority of people in this country.
And
that's what we're centered on.
And I will ask about those policies in a moment. And I do understand why you want to focus on moving forward. I will respectfully put to you that was a bit of a dodge, right? And the reason I am asking about identifying sort of what you missed the mark on as a party is because I imagine that will help inform the direction you take moving forward. When you mentioned the review, for example, that's being done, when will that be released and will it be made public?
Yeah, Don Davies, he's doing his best to try and move the conversation forward, but yeah, sorry, not happening. Well, the election was more than 4 months ago. That's ancient history. Actually, it's not. It's only 4 months ago. And it's relevant because the NDP suffered one of the most catastrophic losses in recent politics. Now, that doesn't really compare to Kathleen Wynne's Liberals in Ontario. That's a different type of loss. But when you go from the ability to be potentially the official opposition after the next election to then losing party status in the next election, that is a catastrophic drop. Their party can literally fit inside a minivan. As Tanya says, they're the minivan party right now. So when he said, well, we're going to be going on a retreat, well, at least you just have to rent a van and the entire caucus can fit in there and you can go on a road trip because you don't have any money. So looks like you're going to be going to McDonald's and spending your time at the Motel 6. So that's what it is for the NDP. But what these politicians don't understand is when you're not authentic, it really ticks people off because you are there being paid by taxpayer money. And the age of politicians just being able to lie and lie and lie and lie and lie, and they can just get away with it because the only people that are really listening to them are reporters because what they say then gets reported in the paper, and that's what Canadians read. No, that's history. Ancient history. Canadians can hear you, see you, watch you, and they can tell if you're being authentic or not. And authenticity, that is what people are looking for in this day and age, not just with politics, but with everything. And if you're not authentic, especially the younger generation, they will sniff that out faster than you can blink. And that means a lot to people.
I'm not exactly sure when the review will be made public, but sometime this fall, and I'm sure it will be. We have Emily Taman from Ottawa, a noted human rights lawyer, a longtime member of our party, and actually a former candidate who is touring the country talking to candidates, riding presidents, rank and file members, progressive allies, and to get at the very questions that you're talking about, Vashi, which is to sort of do a really honest inventory about why we are where we're at and how we can improve going forward.
One more question about the leadership before I get into those issues and sort of your posture during the upcoming sitting. You told my colleague Steve Paikin that your party in the last election veered too far from class-based to identity politics. This week, I think arguably the biggest headline out of the official launch of the leadership race was that rule I mentioned in the introduction, that basically the requirement that at least 50% of the total required signatures must be from members who do not identify as a cis man. I understand the motivation. I think I would assume behind that would be to be more inclusive. But do you get how that headline landed? The impression left really is one where identity politics still do rule.
Yeah, and I don't share that sort of line from the media on that, because there's a difference between identity politics and inclusion. And, you know, all parties have rules in their leadership races where they require their leadership candidates to reach out to a broad range of people. For instance, on region, Conservatives, Liberals, NDP always require a certain number of nominations to come from different regions, and that's to include people. So the NDP has broadened that. For instance, we have a certain percentage of nominations have to come from young people, which I think is critically important, especially, again, if you talk to young people today who are having great difficulty finding jobs, the home ownership is out of the question for them, they're worried about their futures. I think having leadership candidates have to reach out to those people and engage them in discussion and include them in the political process is really important. So I think inclusion is a very, very vital component of our leadership race, and it's the way that you're going to get diverse policies and include as many people from all walks of life in this country in the very important decisions we're going to have to make moving forward.
And that's why I said, like, I understand the motivation is inclusion, and I understand the merits of that. But if you want more young people to vote or more young people to participate, do you say to old people that they shouldn't? It's the negative connotation, right? It's like cis men can't, don't, do not. The language, I would imagine, is important, and it does send a message.
Right. But again, that, with respect, that interpretation is wrong. There is no don't or can't. As many people that want to nominate can. You can get 3,000 nominations. This is it's just that a minimum of the 500 required have to come from a certain group. There is nothing preventing anybody in this country from any group of signing nomination papers at all. So this is just to make sure that there is a deliberate attempt to reach out to marginalized groups, people that are often left out of the process, so that we can bring people in, and that doesn't take away rights from anybody else.
So more than 50% can be from cis men?
It's of the 500, right? Of the 500
Right.
required signatures, a certain percentage have to be, but beyond that, anybody can nominate. So everybody is included and welcome in the NDP leadership.
But that's what's required, right? Those signatures. Like I think you're trying to say like this is made up, but like that is what is written.
No, it's a policy by our federal council that's intended to make sure that we are reaching out to as many diverse groups as possible, and to do it in a way that that includes everybody and doesn't keep anybody out of our race.
Okay, let me ask you about Parliament.
Really? It's made up. That's not what it says? Well, let's remind everybody what it says. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the 2026 rules for governing the NDP leadership contest. This is the specific area in question. A minimum of 50 signatures must be from members in each of the following 5 regions: Atlantic, Quebec, Ontario, British Columbia, North, and the Prairies. That makes sense. At least 50% of the total required signatures must be from members who do not identify as a cis man. C. A minimum of 100 signatures must be from members of equity-seeking groups, including, but not limited to, racialized, gotta love that word, members, Indigenous members, members of the LGBTQIA2S+ community, and persons living with disabilities. At least 10% of the total required signatures must come from young New Democrats at the time of signature collection. So yeah, if you're at the 50% mark, you can't go above it. Oh, you're a dude? You're a dude? You're a white dude? Yeah. Sorry, you can't sign this. I need somebody else. Ladies and gentlemen, that's sexism, potentially racism, but it's discrimination. That's literally what we're talking about, is discrimination. So he can sit there all he wants and try and say, well, you know, it's not really. Come on. As she mentioned, Don Davies had said before, well, we veer too far into identity politics. This is literally what's ingrained in your leadership race. And I wish the legacy media would start talking about the NDP delegate nomination process when it comes to their convention, because they're not letting people go if there's more than 50% men from a specific riding. We've covered that too. So when you're saying, oh, we're not leaning into identity politics, yes, you frickin' are. You are literally alienating people from wanting to vote for your party. You might as well just tear everything up at this point. But hey, you guys want to lean into that? That's fine. You want to get the far left people on your side and drag them away from the liberals? Have at her. But in my opinion, you're not going to be winning over any rational people that are interested in voting NDP. They're going to be interested in voting for the party that is going to be taking their issues seriously. And when you're prefacing your entire leadership race and your convention, not based on policy, not based on the working class people, but based on what equipment you actually were born with and what the color of your skin is and what your sexual preference is, I'm sorry, NDP, you've completely lost the plot.